Cold water slapped the hull in hard, regular blows, a sound like metal doors slamming somewhere below. Midnight had passed, and the SS Dorchester pushed through black Arctic swells in a slow, stubborn line with her escorts. Inside, more than 900 men lay stacked in bunks or sat on duffels in the passageways, boots unlaced, coats tossed aside to cool off in the crowding heat. The ship was a reworked luxury liner in wartime paint, its chandeliers long gone, its ballrooms turned into barracks and mess lines. Steel bulkheads sweated, vent fans thudded. Somewhere in the dark, a radio operator tapped out routine traffic, while a restless private counted the seconds between the ship's deep shutters and told himself that rhythm meant safety. The chaplains were used to being stopped in those narrow corridors. Lieutenant George Fox, a Methodist minister older than most aboard, met eyes and smiled the way a person does when he knows you're looking for a steady face. Lieutenant John Washington, a Catholic priest, kept a hand on the shoulder of a private shivering from nerves rather than cold. Lieutenant Alexander Good, a rabbi, moved gracefully between stacked crates and bunk posts, cracking a short sentence that landed as a joke without ever undercutting the fear it was meant to ease. Lieutenant Clark Poling, a Dutch Reformed minister, listened hard and spoke softly. Men came from all denominations to hear them. Out here, the labels didn't matter. Everyone understood the same geography, a long black ocean, and the chance of a sudden hit from below. Convoy SG-19 made slow miles under a weak moon. The Coast Guard cutters Tampa, Escanaba, and Comanche rode guard on the flanks, their searchlights hooded. Orders were simple: no smoking topside, life jackets at hand, boots near bunks, and no unnecessary noise. But heat gathers fast in a crowded ship, and straps chafe. Some men ditched the rule and hung jackets on pegs. Others tucked them under mattresses and promised themselves they would pull them on if anything happened. On deck, frost filmed the rails. Below, the air tasted of oil, soap, and human breath. Shortly before 1 a.m. on February 3, 1943, a shadow under the convoy rose to meet its moment. German U-boat U-223 had stalked the formation and now steadied its aim. In the Dorchester's wheelhouse, the watch squinted into dark that seemed to press back. Then the torpedo struck starboard amidships. The hit was a violent punctuation, an instant of white shock, a slam that lifted decks and threw bodies, and a ripping roar that shot through the passageways as the lights cut out. Steam lines burst. The ship took water fast and began to list. In the blackness, men felt for ladders, found elbows and faces instead, and pushed toward the nearest way up. Up the ladders they poured, coatless and barefoot, colliding, apologizing, clawing for purchase as the list increased. Topsides, the air hit like a knife. The sea boiled with wreckage. Lifeboat falls had iced in the spray. Some boats dropped crooked and dumped their loads. Others hung stubborn and refused to move. The Coast Guard escorts wheeled to fight off a second attack and to pick up whoever made it into the water alive. On the Dorchester's tilting deck, time compressed into small, necessary acts. The chaplains moved. They stood at the equipment lockers, passing out life jackets with quick, practiced motions, shouting to keep lines moving, guiding men toward rafts. A private came up empty and froze. One of the chaplains, each survivor's memory has a different angle on which, pulled off his own jacket and pressed it into the soldier's hands with a firm nod that meant there would be no argument. The others did the same when supply ran out. They said short prayers when asked. They steadied hands that couldn't make buckles work. They pointed men toward the rail and told them to jump clear, feet first, hold your breath. Below, water chased through compartments. The engine's heartbeat faltered. The Dorchester settled lower, her lights still dead, her horn silent. The deck canted more sharply and began to shed gear, crates, and men who couldn't find a hold. Those who leapt early hit water just above freezing, breath left on contact, and muscles seized. A man had minutes in that sea, 5 maybe, before fingers refused the oar and thoughts slowed. Rescue started as soon as the escorts could turn. The Escanaba launched its lifeboats and sent men onto rafts, hauling survivors up by belts and armpits. The Comanche fought its way into the field of floating debris and bodies, its crew throwing lines to hands that reached once, then again, then slipped under. The Tampa ranged for the attacker. Flares lit the ice haze in brief, orange bursts that made the scene look staged and unreal. Witnesses remembered a final image on the Dorchester's deck. With the tilt now severe and the rail near the water, 4 figures stood braced, shoulders touching. Their mouths moved in prayer, in Hebrew and Latin and plain American English, the sound of home places carried over wind and steam. No one saw them try to save themselves. The ship rolled, the bow bit, and the ocean rose to take her. In less than 20 minutes from the strike, the Dorchester was gone. By dawn, the escorts had pulled roughly 230 men from rafts and water. More than 670 were lost to the sea and cold. The Coast Guard later wrote the report in the clipped tones the service uses when there's nothing left to do but record what happened. The numbers landed like weights. Families were notified. The war moved on. Convoys kept sailing. The story of the 4 chaplains did not move on. Survivors told it in mess halls, on trains, and in hometown newspapers. The names settled into the American memory: Fox, Good, Poling, Washington, men who gave away the last thing that might have saved them, and stayed to give the ship's final minutes order it would not otherwise have had. The Army awarded each the Distinguished Service Cross and the Purple Heart. In 1961, Congress authorized the 4 Chaplains Medal, a unique decoration to mark a courage that did not fit neatly inside the usual categories. Fox had served as a medic in the First World War and knew the flat stare of shock. Good, the son of a rabbi, balanced faith with a trained, practical calm. Poling came from a line of ministers and had asked his father to pray not for safety, but usefulness. Washington, once a Newark newsboy turned parish priest, could cut fear with a steady joke. None of that changed physics or water temperature. It did change what the men around them managed to do in the minutes they had left. The wreck rests in the Greenland Sea, cold and quiet, its decks silted, its railings softened by growth and time. Nothing about it is visible from the surface, but the lane the convoy followed is still there on a chart, and the water still carries the same bite in February. If you stand on a cutter's deck in that weather, you understand how fast a human body surrenders to cold, and how deliberate a choice it was to remove a life jacket, hand it to another, and stay aboard a sinking ship. History gives us tactics and tonnage and the chessboard of the North Atlantic. It also gives us small, exact decisions made in the worst minutes of a life. The Dorchester's end belongs to both records. A ship was torpedoed and lost. And on that ship, 4 men found a way to make the last thing they did stand for something larger than fear. Their story is why people still say their names when they talk about courage at sea, and why the image of linked arms on a slanting deck still feels close, even over black water and years. Thank you for listening to The Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.